Do you want to dovetail that into the Clubhouse layoffs just because it,
Yeah,
it
I was
has that
about
identity
you read
piece?
you read my mind.
Okay. So, I mean, Clubhouse isn't the only one that had, layoffs. Layoffs have just been a
This
trend in the media recently, but this
correct.
past week there's another number of companies. Dropbox was another big one. I think Snap had some, but this one kind of hit differently just cuz there was so many of my close friends that were affected, right? And actually reflecting on it, if I was still there, I would have completely have been affected by these. Because it was exactly the team that I was on. So, I could definitely see that happening as well. And I think one thing as I was like talking to different, not just people from Clubhouse, because like some of the other friends that were at some of these other companies that also got laid off that we started talking to. And it made me think,
The themes are similar pretty much.
yeah, the themes are completely similar. What would you do if you got laid off? Like, I know you're in like a pretty safe, cushy position, but
Ish.
tomorrow
It's cush
you got the
safe-ish.
call. Yeah, tomorrow you get a call. What is your action plan if you got laid off?
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a story.
Okay.
I don't think I told you. So again, my part-time job, I mentioned this when my first job out, my one of my first jobs out of college, again, was a part-time athletic training job. It was a contract through a PT clinic that was I was outreaching to a high school. So that's how the contract worked. So I worked about August to December, first week of the year. So I called in the office like, "Hey Justin, we just need a meeting." I'm like, "Oh crap, did I do something wrong?" I'm a pretty likable guy, and I didn't mess things up as my first year that bad. I couldn't, right? And they're like, "Hey, dude, the school just informed me that they don't have money for a contract. So as of right now, you have to cease operations. Like you can't go back to the high school." And this is my first job, and this is when the kind of going back to the grit thing. This is what I'm very grateful for. I just said, I get it. It is what it is. It sucks. I'll figure it out. And that phrase saves my life so many times. I'm very grateful again on I was able to create networks so I could pick up some odd end jobs to float, but I knew who I was and I know this job didn't define me. So, but the scary aspect, I had bills to pay, and I'll say I'll figure it out. I had one of my lull days. I'm having a bad day. I just turn off for a day, and I said tomorrow's a new day. It's a reset. This is my reset. Freaking go get some ice cream. And yeah, I was like, all right, I'll stop, reassess, and then back at it tomorrow, and then I'll figure it out. So that was the grit that came in. Like it was, well, I was an offensive lineman in high school, and what gets me through this like hard times, it was my coach would always say, you can't go around it, you have to go through it. And that was it. And anything that happened hard in my life, I just went through. There's no ways around it. So identity wise, I knew who I was in the sense of a creator, a soon to be podcaster. So I was like, all right, I have some time. Let's just podcast. That's how it started. And yeah, I can't say I can't define my identity. I just knew that I was not tied to a job during that time.
What'd you
Now I
do to
felt
get
like I
yourself
was
out of everything though? So like you weren't tied to it, but like what were your like three steps that like got you back up and going?
assessing the problem. Okay, I need money. How am I gonna get money? Then you just break down, you start with small steps. All right, who do I know in my network? I could have odd jobs. I have skills. Okay, what are my skills? It just can't be a global thing of like, hey, I am only tied to this one title. For me, it was assessing my skills and what was I strong at. So what I did was, all right, went back to my boss, like, hey, Ross, your website needs help. Let me try to figure some stuff out. Can I do that? And then it was small, like, yeah, sure. But it gave me like a small minimum, like wage, at least a little bit. All right, I have some there. All right, there's some doc's office. Hey, doc, can you like, do you need help on this time? Like, yeah, we got you. Like, we just have to like 1 to 2 days. I'm like, oh crap, okay. Then you just accumulate hours. And I'm like, all right, I'm cool. But that's how I saw. Like I never developed an identity. I created skill sets that surrounded this sense of job. It was those small skill sets that made me survive.
How long did it take you from the time that they pulled the contract to the time that you came up with like identifying your skills and getting your first gig?
2 weeks.
Okay.
I had nothing else to do. I got laid off.
Yeah, but I mean, did it take some time to like go through that like journey
Yeah,
and
it it took me too much to start executing. Like it took me 2 weeks to get the ball rolling, and but it was one of those things you just had to sit down and think and contemplate. Revert back to again the participation trophies that you have to sit down and think of what went wrong. That's where it goes. You have to accept that it went wrong. And if you can't address the problem, you can't find a solution. So I just went to work and that was it.
I mean it's a real ass like experience of where
Hmm.
you got knocked down at the knees and you had to figure out how to get the next gig. I mean the things that I took out of that,
Yeah, what about you?
you totally answered my question. Like I was curious on what would be your playbook, and your playbook is definitely different than where my head was going.
Mm,
I think there's a range, right? I think it depends on
hmm.
what their background is. I think there's individuals that might be a little bit more urgent in the way that they're making decisions because I don't know, maybe financial things, right? The first thing that typically comes up is financial constraints of some sort. And then there's some other ones that I think that it's not as top of mind where they need to get something. So they're really diving into side projects, right? Like it's back to that statement that you said earlier about is it happening to me or is it happening for me?
Hmm.
And I think in some of the individuals I connected with, it's happening for them. It's giving them time to pursue new things. And, wherever that might come from in the coming months, it could be totally a huge upside. I mean, at minimum, especially those that are actually working on a project, in their next interview, they could talk about this project or something that they built, or, they're all working with like AI APIs and things like that. So they're going to have some project that's leveraging new tech, and it's obviously the hottest tech right now, where they're like, look what I built when I was having some downtime. Right. Um, but one thing that I was for one of the individuals that I was contacting, right, they were a little bit more on the urgent side. And
Hmm.
I think they went straight into like, okay, I'm going to start throwing my resume out and applying. But there's a few other things that were that was missing for that to actually be effective. Because if you look at everyone that got laid off right now, everyone's just throwing out their resume, right? Like everyone's just going and clicking LinkedIn and things like that. And there's three main things that I think that I kind of identified that could help separate some people from the pack, especially because like right now we're doing hiring, right? Like our team is hiring people. So I get all these inbounds
Hmm.
all the time and I see certain things that I'm just like, next, without even contacting them, right?
Hmm.
So the first thing is polish up your resume and your LinkedIn. And I think resume is one thing, making sure you have all the right structure, things like that.
Hmm.
Obviously, you can get resources on that. The second part, I think, is LinkedIn, especially if you're reaching out to these hiring managers on LinkedIn. If the first thing a hiring manager is seeing when they click your LinkedIn after you send that message is a blank LinkedIn page, that's not a good look because
Not a
in
good thing.
most cases, they didn't send their resume. And so all I'm seeing is like maybe their name and their company name and their position. And I'm just like, yeah, pass, right?
Like I'm
The
good.
completely. So, step one, polish up your stuff, especially if you're reaching out to people because they're going to see that. I think step two is now differentiate yourself. So, if someone does send me something that looks a little bit interesting, the next
Hmm.
question that I ask them is, do you have a portfolio or a website that I can see something that you've worked on? And I think that right there sometimes causes individuals to pause a little bit because they're like, hey, the projects I was working on at work, there's like NDAs or it's confidential, things like that. But if people are laid off and they have time to do some stuff, or even for with the work that they were working on, just anonymize the information, but like put something together that now leans towards like what you can do more than someone else that has the same exact description in their resume. Right. So that I would say that's
Yeah.
like level 2, because when I'm getting these in mails on LinkedIn, if they send that with it, I'm like, ooh, this is actually kind of interesting now.
Yeah, I can vibe with this. Like it kind of also shows they took action.
Absolutely. Right. And especially because we're in the startup game, like
You have to take action.
there's so many people that can make a pretty PowerPoint, but that's just one thing. I need to be able to know that this person can actually execute the pretty PowerPoint like ideas that they had just sent me. And there's only a few ways you could actually gauge the ability that someone can actually execute against something, especially in a really, really short time frame. And then the last piece is use headhunters. Like contact every headhunter, give them your resume, and like let them work for you. Because while you're going out and trying to find the full-time job, if push comes to shove, you're at the end of your like reserve cash in your bank, pick up a
Mm-hmm.
damn contract that one of these headhunters throw your way, because that's better than trying to do it all on your own, coming out with zeros all across the board, and then now you're in a situation where you have no options like at all, and you're out of cash.